I'm not sure if she's coming or not. I have not heard from her, so.
Okay, good morning. I, Carrie Pruitt, called the meeting of the Student Attendance Advisory Committee to order at 9:01, March 14th, 2025. And Sherry, can we do roll call?
Roger Button,
Present.
Tracy Moore, Carrie Pruitt,
Present.
Lacey Keeley, Charles Agelbach,
Present.
Rayleigh Killingsworth, Danielle Villancourt.
Here.
Thank you.
Secretary, are there any public comments?
No public comment. Oh, sorry, Trustee Westlake.
Here.
Would you like to do public comment?
Oh, you do it at the very beginning?
Well, I'm just, if it's, I know you have to
Okay,
leave,
I will
so.
do that then I can leave when it's getting close to.
Yeah,
get
I
over
thought
to
we could do that, yeah.
Okay, sorry.
We'll do it early.
We do our public comment at the end of the meeting.
We just
so.
wanted to give you some leeway.
Oh, thank
so.
you, thank you. That's why I was like, okay, you guys, they want us to put it at the beginning.
Yeah.
So, hi everyone. Some of the faces here I've gotten to know and appreciate you so much, and now I get to see new faces. I'm here on behalf of the Board of Trustees to thank you for the work that you're doing, and I have to say we are making an improvement. We really are, and this is such important work because I think everyone would agree when a child isn't in the classroom, they're missing so much, not just the instruction that they'd be receiving, but the socialization, the making the contacts that some of these friends they'll have way into the future, getting used to working as teams in the classroom. So this is really, really important work, and that's why I wanted to be here to say thank you. Last year I just signed up, or the time before, to thank the insurance committee because that's what I had some background in, and I felt comfortable. And even though I'm not an educator, I can see the difference that's being made when I'm going into classrooms. And one of the first things I'm asking the principals is, how's the absenteeism in the school? Do you feel like it's improving? What are you guys doing to improve the absenteeism rate? And I can tell you, every one of my schools says there is marked improvement, and I can't help but think that that's coming from you guys and all of the work that you're doing. So this is very important. They're working on their family engagements, working on keeping contacts and staying on top of it, making sure kiddos know how welcome they are when they are there. And for me, I'm trying to do my part. What I'm doing is I'm rotating my elementaries. So just yesterday, Jerry Whitehead was up in the rotation, and I asked what classes have almost perfect attendance. I mean, it's hard to get to 100%, but it was the second graders. So I took donuts over to Jerry Whitehead second grades and went in the classrooms and reiterated how important it was and how much their classmates count on them when they're there. It gets announced on the dojo when it goes out, and what I'm hoping is those kiddos will tell other kids, you know, we got donuts today because we had good attendance, and we are going to have success in academics. We're going to have success in behaviors. If we can get kids in the classrooms, I firmly believe that. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for the work you're doing. And I appreciate everything. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Item 2.01, approval of the minutes of the January 17th, 2025 meeting of the Student Attendance Advisory Committee for possible action. Is there any discussion discussion regarding the minutes? Public comment regarding the minutes? If no public comment, I'd like to request a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the January 17th agenda. I second it.
Okay, motion made by Roger Botten and seconded by Charles Applebot. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Okay, item 2.02, introduction of new committee member Danielle Valancourt. Is that right? For presentation and discussion.
I just wanted to say really quick, Rochelle Morel, for the record, we're so happy to have you, Danielle, and we didn't have an opportunity to put her on the agenda last time because she had just been approved the Tuesday before our Friday meeting by our Board of Trustees. So we're happy to have you, welcome, and then hoping that you can introduce yourself officially to the rest of the committee.
Hello, my name is Danielle Valancourt. I have 2 children within Washoe County right now, one age 3 and one just turned 7 this last Saturday. We go to Catherine Dunn, so I do see a mixture of children that are both prepared for school and not prepared for school. So after having a few people in my life have some issues with the school system, and I wouldn't necessarily call them threats, but I just think there needs to be some things to, some new ways to help kids stay in school is all I can say. So I think that maybe I can help with a few ideas or just be involved with the process in general, because this is my first committee that I've been involved with, and it's because I'm a parent. So it's nice to be on here. And I also do real estate and own a business called Savvy Servers. So I'm happy to be here.
Again. Item 2.03. Excuse me, my throat. Review of historical perspective of chronic absenteeism data and trends and initiatives being led by Washoe County School District and county partners to improve attendance. Presentation and discussion.
Okay, good morning again, Rochelle Morel for the record. I prepared a short presentation for all of you because we have some new committee members. I wanted to give you a historical perspective of where we have been with chronic absenteeism, where we are now, what are some of the efforts that are across our school district in terms of what does our schools do, what does central office do, and what does the community, what have they contributed for chronic absenteeism. Chronic absenteeism is complex. There's many reasons why students miss school. Sometimes because they're for really good reasons, like chronic illnesses, or those kinds of things, and sometimes they're not always a good reason, and so we have to address those barriers when we see students become chronically absent. So I'm going to give you a little perspective. Chronic absenteeism is defined by the federal government as missing 10% or more of the school year. So if you look at the entire school year, that's 180 days. If you miss 18 days for the entire school year, you're chronically absent. If you're severely chronically absent, you've missed 20% or more of the school year. And so because it's a percentage, this fluctuates throughout the year. So when you think about a student maybe that was just enrolled and they've missed 2 days, they're already chronically absent because, you know, if they've missed 2 days out of the first week, they're chronically absent, but that will fluctuate as they come to school. So we are reluctant to talk about today's chronic absenteeism because it fluctuates because it's a percentage and it's looking at the entire school year. So I'm providing a little bit of information for you for 2019, 2021, 22, 23, 24. So you can see historically what that looked like. So you can see that the light gray is 2019. That was right before the pandemic. So 2019, 2020, you know, in 2020 of that year, in March, about almost a year, almost 5 years today, we went on where we closed schools, and then we were closed for the rest of the school year. So we saw a pretty significant increase in chronic absenteeism in that 2021 school year. So that would be looking at 2020-2021 school year. So 39% of our students at that time were chronically absent. And then in 2022, we saw a decrease down to 24%. Back up again in 2023, and then last year it was at 26%. This is the federal definition of chronic absenteeism. In Nevada, we have a Nevada revised statute that allows us to exempt 2 absences that do not count against chronic absenteeism. One is if we receive a note from a medical doctor or behavioral health professional exempting a student from absences for whatever medical or mental health reason. So if they say the student needs to be out for 2 days, those 2 absences will be marked as exempt. And then we have 5 religious holidays that we can exempt in the year as well. So sometimes when you see different chronic absenteeism data, it's because the federal definition are all absences regardless of the reason. And Nevada allows for some exempted absences. So in Nevada, we have a few exempted absences, and if we take into account those exempted absences, the rates look a little bit different. That's the reason for that. I'm going to pause and see if there's questions, because that can be a little confusing. Okay. All right. We also broke this down into elementary, so you can see sort of what the trends have been in elementary school. In terms of chronic absenteeism, you can see there's been big spikes in middle school and in high school, and they continue to struggle with chronic absenteeism at a high school level. When we look at grade level, you'll see our kindergartners are pretty chronically absent. So we're talking right now, how do we better prepare our students in kindergarten to attend? Sometimes kindergarten is a predictor of being chronically absent in the future. So if students are chronically absent in kindergarten, that's a predictor that they could be chronically absent in later grades as well. And then you'll see our 12th graders. Those 12th graders are the most chronically absent in our district and the most severely chronically absent in our district. So you can see sort of this trend, which has been always typical, but we're just seeing larger numbers over time. But last year we decreased a little bit, so that was good news. You have a question?
Just one question.
Yeah.
Was there a change, and I don't remember looking back, between 5th and 6th grade, when 6th graders were in elementary school, were their attendance better? Or did that sure when they went, or is that confused by COVID?
Yeah, I'm not totally sure, Roger. We could look back at that. That transition from elementary school to middle school is really hard for students. They're going from one teacher, typically knowing all of their peers, their teachers, they're comfortable, they have those connections, to middle school where they're expected to be more independent, but developmentally they're sort of starting to grow and go through quite a bit developmentally, and now they're going to seven classes. They have to be at school at 7:20 in the morning instead of 9 o'clock. So these are big transitions for students. And developmentally, if you've ever had a middle school child in your home, they don't get up in the morning well at that early, and so sleep can be difficult, or getting students up in the morning is difficult. And so there's quite a few reasons why, but what we see in terms of transitions is all transitions are difficult. So that kindergarten, you see this is the first time students are typically in school unless they went to pre-K. So we've got some high rates of chronic absenteeism there. Then 6th grade, that transition from 5th to 6th, we're going to see increases in chronic absenteeism. And typically the 8th to 9th, we'll see increases in chronic absenteeism as well. So those transitions for students are hard. And we've been working a lot this year around how do we strengthen these transitions, not only for preparing the students, but providing support to families so that families know what to expect, how they can be involved in their child's education. When my daughter went to 6th grade, she did not want me to be volunteering in the classroom. So then even working in the school district, I struggled with how do I continue to stay engaged as a parent and support my child's education. And so there's a lot that we want to continue to strengthen in terms of how do we better support families so they have connections as well and they know how to support their child's education. So those are some of the grade level. These are our breakdowns for race and ethnicity for 2023 to 2024. So you can take a look at that. You see our Native American students and our African American students and our Pacific Islander students are the races that are struggling the most with chronic absenteeism. And then these are our special populations. So I'll break down what these mean. Free and reduced lunch, FRL. Those are students that are receiving free or reduced lunches, and they qualify for this when based on income. IEPs are students that have individualized education plans and they're receiving special education services. EL are our English learners. CAT are our children in transition. These are students that are considered homeless in our school districts. And then our students in foster care. So you'll see sort of these trends with chronic absenteeism between 2023 to 2024. Of all of our special populations, our students that are homeless are the most chronically absent and the most severely chronically absent students in our district. And unfortunately, today we are higher in our students that we've identified as homeless by 200 than we were this time last year. So we're close to identifying about 1,500 students that are homeless right now.
I'm sure we can, sorry.
Did you go ahead?
Do we expect these numbers to rise as our economy,
The
As what it's doing for
CIT numbers?
CIT and foster?
We do, unfortunately. You know, I'll let Carrie address foster. That'll be something that she can address since she's from Human Services Agency. But we do expect that children in transition, because rent costs, housing costs are continuing to increase. It's hard for people to afford houses with interest rates as high as they are. And living costs, overall living costs of just trying to make ends meet are difficult. So they are continuing to increase, and we identify up till June 30th of every year. So, and then we reassess living situations come July 1. So we'll start identifying July 1, and then we identify based on living situation up till June 30th. And then we'll have our final numbers.
I'm sure I can find this information online, but sometimes it gets convoluted. What are all the CAT and foster programs that we have here in town?
So in terms of programming, we have a federal mandate called McKinney-Vento that's been in law since 1987. Reagan actually put it in law. And it provides federal protections if you fall under the definition of homelessness under McKinney-Vento. So it looks different than the HUD definition of homelessness. So it's students who lack a adequate nighttime residence. So it could be a weekly motel, it could be couch surfing where if they're an unaccompanied youth, they've been displaced, they're not with a legal guardian, and so they're just staying with a friend for a period of time. It can be a family that's living with another family because of financial hardship and they're not on the lease. And then shelters, so any family shelter, domestic violence shelter, and we have families sometimes that are living in their cars or on the streets as well. So those are kind of typically what we think of as homelessness, but the McKinney-Vento allows for weekly motels as well, and the doubled up situations. So we have that one program within the school district. We have about 7 staff that are federally funded that provide support to students. So last year, off of the top of my head, we had about 1,800 students that we identified as homeless. We're already up to 1,500 now. So we anticipate, unfortunately, that we'll probably get close to about 2,000 students. And then I'll defer to Carrie for her thoughts around foster.
Okay, yeah, so I was just curious, like the Eddie House, that's one of them. program, right, that's a.
Yeah, Eddie House
programs.
typically, we're identifying students from K through 12. Eddie House works with older youth, unaccompanied youth.
Gotcha,
So, yeah.
okay.
And sometimes we're working with them as well, so we partner pretty close with Eddie House. They're a nonprofit. I'm just talking about school district programming, but there are other programs out there like Children's Cabinet, Eddie House, that provide support to students as well.
No, she answered it.
Here for the record, as Rochelle said, I work for Washington County Human Services, and I am our educational liaison, so excuse my throat, I'm getting over a little thing. So when we talk about foster youth, as Rochelle mentioned, you know, when the economy is struggling, you know, our families are already struggling, tend to struggle harder, and so traditionally the number of youth being reported and struggles being reported to our agency does spike a little. I will say, interestingly enough though, over about the last 5 years, I've been with the county for 8 years, and our census is actually lower than it was back then, which is interesting to know. But so along with the struggles that came naturally through COVID and the housing issues, also comes a reduction in foster homes available. And that is a huge stressor because we have fewer foster homes available to our kids, which means we have more kids in, for example, Kids Cottage and emergency placements. And that's really that's been a huge stressor for the agency and for our families because they're being asked to do more with less resources. But I would like to add to that, I wanted to thank the intervention department because they've added another staff member who works in foster care, and her name's Taylor Schuster, and she's a foster liaison. So she and I work pretty closely on Taylor, one of her babies is the chronically absent kids. And so she keeps a close eye on those kids, and she gets to know them, and she works with the schools on what interventions are being put into place. We actually staff, or we meet with our social workers regarding the kids that are very chronically absent, and we work through all of the issues. You know, as we know, kids in foster care, they have less adults in their life normally, unfortunately, that they trust. So having a trusted adult in school, which has been identified as a key factor, you know, is it's a struggle for, you know, all kids, but just identifying that person they can really connect with is something that we're working on as well. And so we work together on that, and also just to add for the group, the foster care liaisons are co-located in our building at social services. So I just said social services again. It's a hard habit to kick, but so they're in our offices, in the office right next to mine every week, 1 or 2 days a week. So we're able to meet with workers and in person and kind of work through these things, which is it's been a nice addition, which started about 7 or 8 years ago. So we have that, but also to add to that, you mentioned Eddie House, and so just recently at a conference I went to locally, I had a conversation with Eddie House is now coming into the high schools. Normally they provide services to over 18, so they're coming into the high schools and they have the Eddie House, Eddie Hangout, and they're offering resources and stuff to kids. So we are, I've got some ideas brewing about, we're going to be working with them to incentivize kids to go visit the Eddie House when they're at school as an incentive when they get to school to visit the Eddie Hangout people, and they have free stuff, you know, so they have gift cards and just as a way to incentivize kids too. So I'm looking forward to that, expanding that partnership as well. So if that helps, I could probably go on, but we work really hard on these lists. We pay attention to those chronic absenteeism lists, and most of the time, a lot of the time, they're where kids were kind of talking about anyhow, but we have meetings specific to attendance and just how to get kids to school when they have it's hard for them to get to school sometimes when they're not stable in their lives. So it's just an added layer in their challenging life. So.
Thank you, Carrie, for mentioning and reminding me about Claire and Taylor. So they're in my department, and they work really closely with Carrie, as she said. And they're working specifically with students in foster care to support them so that we can collaborate very closely to help identify any need that a student in foster care has. And I'll just reiterate what Carrie said. Unfortunately, there is a real what is the word I'm looking for? There's just not enough foster homes. And so both CIT and foster have school of origin rights to stay in their school where they have established relationships, where they know the teachers, they have their peers. But if a student is in Damani and then they are displaced from their home and placed in a foster home in the North Valleys, it's almost impossible for us to figure out transportation, so that child misses out on all those relationships because that's the only foster home available for them.
Yeah.
Because there's just a lack of, that's what I was looking for. I don't know why that was out of my head. There's just such an incredible shortage of foster homes out there. So they are always recruiting and looking for families that are willing, or individuals willing to do that. Okay, so as you can see through some of the data, the reasons why students miss school can be very complex and varied and can be multiple reasons. And so the three main reasons we see are academic insecurity. So students are struggling. They continue to struggle through COVID, and they're still trying to catch up. So for those students that were struggling before, COVID made a bigger gap in their academics, and so they're trying to catch up now. And then some thrived through those online settings and are doing well, but those students that were chronically absent, the more school they missed, the farther behind they become. Those academics get larger and larger, and so when they come back, it's really hard. They don't know what's happening, and so they get disengaged. And so it's sort of a bad cycle of, okay, I'm gonna come back, I don't know what's going on, I'm not gonna go to school. And so those academic gaps are one of the biggest things that we see. We also see when students don't feel connected to peers or teachers, the school staff. So students will tell us in our student attendance review board hearings, I don't have an adult I connect to. I don't have anybody that I trust or know. So they don't feel like they're even noticed when they're not there. And that's the perception of the student. Obviously, the school staff know, they miss them, they want them there, but the perception of the student is that they're not noticed, right? So there's that perception. Other things that we see are challenges around transportation, challenges around chronic illness, challenges around bullying, challenges around other lack of access to basic needs like consistent housing, food, clothing, hygiene products. High school students are very, very aware of how they smell, how they look, how they're dressed. So those kinds of things. Childcare is a struggle. So not all of our elementary schools have before and after school programs. So if a parent works very early in the morning, sometimes elementary school students have to get themselves to school at 9 o'clock in the morning. And so elementary school students don't always get themselves to school on time in the morning, right? But that parent has to work. They're trying to make ends meet. So those are struggles. The cost of childcare in our community or across the country is difficult. It's incredibly expensive. So sometimes older siblings have to stay home to provide childcare for the younger siblings. So there's a lot of systemic things that happen that impact students' ability to get to school. So those are a couple of reasons. But what are we doing about it? There's lots of things going on. So I do want to share what we are doing. We do know that schools have improved chronic absenteeism. So what we've been looking at is how much reclaimed instructional time, how much time do we have students where they're in their classroom in front of a teacher, and the vast majority of our schools, are seeing students more often in the classroom. So this is really good news, and this is a celebration where when students are in front of the classroom, when they're with their peers and their teachers, they're building those really important relationships, they're learning how to resolve conflicts, and they're getting exposed to the academics that they need to be successful academically. These are a couple of examples that I pulled out. So what does Peavine Elementary do? They do a multi-layer approach to chronic absenteeism. They've got some systems in place where they look at attendance all the time, so it's a focus of theirs. They're looking at different points in which they might provide different interventions to students. So if a student is not coming to school because of academics, then they're going to provide some individualized support for academics. So maybe they provide them additional math support so that they can improve their math scores. So they'll do some of those things. They're tracking attendance daily. They celebrate with incentives and rewards. Some schools are doing competitions at an elementary level, so you can see in the cafeteria which grade level is winning, and they get to have pizza with the principal. They engage their families in partnerships, so it's important that we partner with families so that together we're working collectively to help support our students. So one of the ideas that we are working on right now is working with families to develop a walking bus so that families that are at home in the morning go around and they walk, but as a group collectively with parents, they're picking up students that need help walking to school. And so that's something that we're sort of working through. Can we do something like that where we're building community and we're supporting each other as a school community? And then they're working on parent-teacher home visits, which is an amazing program through Family School Partnerships, where they really work together in doing home visits with families to help support academics and partnering with families. So those are a few things and some examples that school is doing. At a middle school level, SWOPE, they work really closely with our department, so we meet regularly with them, with the attendance officer, the re-engagement specialist, their school social worker. They have a re-engagement specialist located through a middle school engagement program that we have there, and they have administrators that are looking at their data and identifying students that are approaching chronically absent and addressing those, trying to engage them early on. The counselor is really important in that group as well, or students that are chronically absent. So now what we do, identify the reason, and then figure out how we best support that student to have them come every day. So they meet every Thursday to identify students, and then everybody decides, I'm going to do this with this student, I'm going to do this with this student. So it's coordinated efforts so that everyone's on the same page. And they're doing a lot of communicating around why is it important for your student to come to school. And then Galena, they've done a lot of what we call climate work, where they're really building a lot of community and engaging activities and opportunities for students to engage and just have fun at school. And so they're working on developing academic and social emotional culture. They've got a lot of student voice programming. They do some project-based learning, which is more sorts of hands-on activities for students that really love that hands-on programming that engages students. They're finding specific and individual ways to ignite the curiosity of students. So listening to the student voice, what do they want to do? They have this new outdoor school where they're taking kids up into the mountains and doing science activities with them, or they're out in the forest and learning about science and climate and all sorts of things. So that's really engaging students in a different way, in a more hands-on way. And then Mr. Salter, who is the principal there, he's so amazing at just engaging the entire community, building relationships, and so all of his staff are on board with this, and they are out in the hallways, they're saying hello to everybody, they welcome everyone in, and they welcome students back when they come back if they have missed school. So they're really building some meaningful relationships. So those are a few examples at different schools that I wanted to provide for you. Did you have a question? Oh, sorry, I thought you were taking yourself off the speaker. Okay, so what we know is, of course, relationships are really, really important. Those are one of the most important things. So building those relationships, providing mentors, positive peer relationships, positive adult relationships. So we do those through different ways called check-in, check-out. We do some mentoring, all sorts of things. We're looking at data to try to figure out why a student is missing school, and then what can we do to provide support. Schools are looking at attendance every day, and sometimes they look at chronic absenteeism rates too much, where it's like, okay, maybe just look at it every other day. But they're doing lots of work around attendance and making it a daily focus, and then they're doing lots of engagement. So one of the things that our Board of Trustees did last year is approve 6th grade sports. And so 6th graders can engage in sports at a middle school and engaging students. And then we're increasing some of our club opportunities so that students can engage with each other in pro-social ways, and just make school fun again, in a place that they want to come and enjoy and feel a passion for learning. So super excited about that.
I do have a question
Yes.
on that.
Yeah.
For middle school and high school, how many electives do they have a choice from?
From between middle and high school?
Yeah, like if you were to go to middle school, how many electives would a 7th or 8th grader have to choose from?
You know what, I don't know the answer to that. I mean, they do have electives. So for example, because some schools have different electives that they offer, so they do have music opportunities. So they can choose between choir, band, or strings. At the high school level, there's more opportunities for electives. So I can look in general what the electives look like for you. But I do know in high school there's more opportunities for different kinds of electives for students. And so like if they have to do PE. PE is a required credit. So they can do yoga, they can do power walking, they can do a traditional PE class, they can work in ROTC, those lots of different opportunities for students to do different things.
And they're available at all high schools?
In the vast majority, there are some high schools that have different electives that might not be across, and then there's other schools that, like AACT, that have different electives based on sort of their curriculum, but in general, all high schools have a pretty decent and diverse elective choice for schools, yeah.
I just know it's changed a lot in the
Yeah,
last 10
it
years.
has.
So, like metalworking, anything that has to do with the trades is pretty much gone. So that's kind of what I wanted to question on, is if woodworking, metalworking, auto mechanics, things like that.
There
were
are
available
still
for
some of
all
those in some high schools. I would have to research to what extent. I don't know off of the top of my head, but I do know there are still some of those opportunities out there for kids.
Yeah, I just was trying to think of like the correlating factor between
Right.
schools that have the chronic absenteeism versus not, because I know Galena
Right.
obviously has auto mechanic and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of opportunities for people, whereas other schools do not.
Mhm.
So maybe that's a good factor towards those things, and maybe having more people
Yeah, I
using
certainly can
schools.
research. Do you know any
Roger,
more? Yeah, thank you.
Roger Botton for the record. They have a big variability in terms of those, all at least comprehensive high schools try to put in a lot of different electives for kids to gain interest and things like that.
Yeah.
Some of those, there has been some move towards some of the trade-like schools that we have, and we're pushing that more. Where some of those auto mechanics and things like that, a lot of those have moved to trade schools, but they all do a lot of different, and they try to focus on electives, because that's what keep kids interested, engaged, coming to school. So I think all of them, much more high school than in middle. But they try to expand that as much as possible. And I think they're open to looking at things like that and what the interests of the kids.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe
introducing.
Yeah, they all have a lot, and I think they do try to push that as much as possible.
Yeah, we have opportunities like through TMCC where you can work on your associate's degree and your high school degree at the same time. We have AACT that does things like culinary and media. They've got other academies like the Sports Medicine Academy out at Spanish Springs High School that students can participate in. And then Debbie Smith will be opening soon. And those are other opportunities. And then we have also opened up our school of choice so that parents can apply ahead of time if there's an area or a school that's offering programming that they're interested in. They can apply for that as well. So there's opportunities for students to engage if it's not at a school that they're particularly zoned for.
Do you think that transportation is particularly an issue though?
It can be,
Transportation
transportation can be, but
Yeah.
there are other ways that so for like if a student, let's say a student is zoned for Spanish Springs and they want to go to AACT, they can catch a bus at Spanish Springs High School to AACT. So there's some innovative ways that transportation has been trying to work around supporting getting students to different opportunities for them.
Okay, I just like to ask questions. 'Cause,
No, please do. I'm really glad that.
Yeah, I went to
Don't
school
stop
at-
asking questions.
I went to school here in town, and Pine Middle School had, you can work on metal, woodworking, culinary, you can work on clay pots.
Right.
You had a lot to do, right?
Right.
Because these people were trained, and then based off of whatever this and that, and teachers don't get paid very much, so it's hard for people to want to be in these positions. So that's when trade schools are a great idea.
Right.
But sometimes it's a little too late, because middle school is when they start dabbling into things that they think they're gonna be interested in the long run, and that's when high school becomes even more important because they choose their electives that they wanna do from there.
Yeah.
Whether it's geometry or calculus or auto mechanics.
Right.
But that's when people start driving cars and they wanna know how to change their oil by themselves at 15.
Yeah.
So they can do little things like that.
Mhm.
It's just coming from my perspective as, I remember that very well. And I feel like kids don't see themselves in our society because we don't give them the choice to even pick anything anymore, unless they have the ability to use a bus or because in Southtown there are no buses really, it's really hard to do that. I went to Galena myself, but my mom did not buy me a car. I did not have opportunities like that, and I feel like a lot of other children are in the same boat, no matter where they are in a neighborhood really. And just having more options is helpful, but it's hard to find those options, whether it's RTC buses with the short buses that are hardly used or they're used a lot in certain areas. And then we have a lot of people that are in a certain portion of town that don't look at that perspective, and so they think of really great solutions, but it doesn't always jive. So I just feel like maybe introducing this stuff to younger kids is better because kids are smart, even in elementary school. I have a first grader and she uses a planner. So it's just little things like that kids just need the confidence to know that they are super smart and they have the ability to do these things, but they are not given those choices at home. So.
Roger Bottom for the record again, just running. I have elementary school, so I don't have middle or high. But we do, and I have helped out with career fairs and things that we do for middle schools. And we do when we go down to the convention center, we have career days. We bring every kid from middle school down there. So we have thousands and thousands of kids. And we really do try to push that because the high schools and the schools that have academies and different trade options, we try to get them as interested in that as soon as possible because it gives them a goal.
Yeah.
And that they can say, okay, this is really what it's going for. School isn't just about reading, doing math or something, algebra that we're never going to use. It's about something practical. So we do address that as early as possible. Even within elementaries, we try to do career exploration, get them knowing what different careers are out there. Not as detailed as middle school, but they're really pushing because they're going to have to sign up for some of those academies and things in high school, so we're pushing that in middle school. And I think we really do a pretty good job on that and try to get them interested as soon as possible and look at options, because they have some options if they're going to sign up for specific ones. We try to spread out as much as possible, but the schools do specialize in certain ones.
Yeah.
I think you have a good point, though, is just engaging our children as early as possible to keep them excited about learning is, essentially what I hear you saying, and so I think it's a incredibly valid point for sure.
Yeah.
And it does contribute to attendance.
It does, and maybe offering it twice a year through the school year,
Mhm.
just because kids can't always make it on the time that they want to, and their parents do make it a little harder, so.
Yeah.
They want to attend to everything, it's just whether or not they're allowed to. Right.
True. Okay, I'm gonna try to finish up here. I'm going too long. Oh, let me go back real quick. Okay, so a couple of other things, at least from a broader perspective in central office, and this includes a few departments, but mine as well. Is there's been we have what we call big reports, and these are some incredible data where we can look at chronic absenteeism. You saw a few graphs from the data that I presented earlier, but it breaks it down into a variety of areas for us to better understand what is happening across our district, at our schools, and specific individual student information, and it helps us to better understand how we support schools as well as individual students or groups of students. And so we have these big reports that are that we have expanded and revised and brought in new information to help administrators make decisions about what they need to do to help support their students. We've done a lot of professional learning. We have Academy where we have principals come and we provide training with them. And so we've trained all principals in the school district around different interventions and supports and best practices around attendance. So we've trained all of them. Doug Taylor's in the audience. He's our attendance. You're attendance manager, right?
Yeah.
Attendance manager, used to be attendance coordinator, and he and I and our other re-engagement facilitators have met with 86 schools this year to help support, provide training, to help support them with specific interventions, to provide consultation to help them with their attendance systems, to develop really strong, comprehensive systems. So we've done a lot of that work. So we continue to do that as well and provide trainings to both staff, teachers, administrators, and we have some fun family engagement opportunities that we provide to schools in English and in Spanish as well. We coordinate our community efforts. So we've been working with Mike Kazmierski. Some of you might know him. He used to be over EDON. He's heading up Strengthening Our Communities now. This is a nonprofit that is looking at, from a community perspective, how can we support the school district in reducing chronic absenteeism. So he has identified, together we have identified 10 different areas that we want to look at and help support, but the two that we're working on this year is expanding communities and schools in our schools and the funding to provide support for that. So communities and schools provides school-specific interventions around attendance and academic support. They provide mentoring, they do food pantries, clothes closets, all sorts of things to help support students. And also continuing funding for our middle school engagement. So our re-engagement specialists that are located at a specific middle school that are providing chronic absenteeism interventions and greater access to clubs. So we have, in some of our middle schools, we have robotics, and we have, I've heard succulent, creating succulents, those plants, and it's a student voice, students sort of lead that around the clubs, and the re-engagement specialists are supporting that work so that we're engaging students in different ways, in ways that they have expressed that they're interested. So there's an expansion of clubs that I can say that I do know that that's happening at a middle school level around different areas that students are really interested in. They've actually competed in some of the robotics clubs too, so they're doing some great things with those opportunities. And then they are also working on sustaining funding for family resource centers. So if you're not familiar with them, they're under the school district. Within my department, there's 5 of them. We provide support for families who are in crisis. So we help with housing assistance, rental assistance. We help with NV Energy to get their power back on. We have food pantries, mobile harvests, a variety of things. We help with Medicaid applications, SNAP applications, those kinds of things. So lots of things going on, but they're all grant funded.
What's the name of the, what is the name of
The Family Resource Centers? Yes.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah, just Family Resource Centers, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought
Yeah.
it was like a brand new,
Oh no, we've been around in this school district for 30 years.
oh, I thought that you were partnering with a gentleman that.
No, so he is strengthening our communities is Michael Kazmierski.
Oh,
And he is working to help us with funding for Family Resource Centers. So most of our grants are federally funded. We have 2 grants that are sunsetting here June 30th. So worst case scenario, if we lose staff with those grants and we're not able to sustain that, we may have to close 1 to 2 of our Family Resource Centers. So he's been working really hard with Blueprint Collaborative, who has been doing a lot of work around helping us to raise funds to sustain Family Resource Centers and to potentially expand them to maybe, we've talked a lot about the Pine area. And so we're hoping for that. We really need to get sustainable funding for Family Resource Centers. So they're doing some of that. All of that impacts attendance. If families are in crisis, if they don't have consistent housing, if kids are hungry, that impacts our attendance and our children's ability to be successful academically. So that's why these are the 2 areas that they're really focusing on, and then over time there's some areas that we will also shift our focus to.
so he's the only investor currently?
He's not the investor, he's just leading the effort.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, there's multiple folks that they are approaching right now in terms of fundraising for both areas, the re-engagement, middle school engagement, and Family Resource Centers. So, but it's a pretty impressive process where they're looking at multiple individuals, businesses, private individuals, corporate, so lots of people that they're trying, and then we'll be doing a lot of applying for grants through foundations.
If somebody wanted to be an investor, who would they reach out to?
You can reach out to me initially, and then I can put you in contact with Blueprint Collaborative, who is coordinating those fundraising efforts for us.
Okay.
Yeah. And they have this incredible spreadsheet that sort of figures out, people can donate at a level that is comfortable for them. So it can be as low as $1,000 and as high as $500,000. So it's just whatever anyone wants to contribute. So, and we're looking at trying to find sustainable funding for at least 3 years for this programming. We're doing lots of evaluation of program effectiveness. We're looking specifically at a pilot for check-in, check-out, which is a mentoring program at middle schools. And we'll be able to provide you some of that data once we're completed with the school year around how effective is an intervention like check-in, check-out, and should we expand this across our school district because it's best practice. Always monitoring progress. And then we have finally, I'm trying to get myself to be quiet. Finally, we have developed a really extensive, under the leadership of Doug, a really extensive school toolkit where schools can click into any of these areas on our district website and find information about what does Tier 1 interventions for attendance look like? What do Tier 3 interventions for attendance look like? How do you look at data? How do you look at behaviors? How do you engage families? All these different kinds of things. So you can click through. If you're interested, I can send you the link, but this is basically on our washoschools.net under intervention department. You can click through and just look at all the tools that we've developed. And this has been in collaboration with multiple departments, the communication department, family school partnerships, multi-tier systems of support, counseling, many different departments contributed to this. All right, and that's it. Any questions?
I just wanted to add, Carrie Pruitt for the record, I'm really excited about that check-in, check-out program expanding, because we know that when kids have someone to check in with, to connect with when they arrive at school and when they leave, our chances of them having those relationships, stronger relationships with an adult in the school are so much better. And we've actually asked for that intervention a lot, so now that it's being implemented is pretty neat.
We did this in collaboration with Ariel West Ed, and they developed a ton of tools that are evidence-based tools for our folks to be able to use and track the effectiveness and the interactions that they're having with students. This particular one goes 6 weeks with a 2-week fade out, right? 6 weeks, 2-week fade out. So we've got some methodology behind it. Unfortunately, West Ed, their contract was pulled because it was federally funded, but we're going to be evaluating the effectiveness internally with our accountability department. So we've pivoted quickly, and we'll still be able to provide some evaluation data.
Ready to move on?
Yes.
All right. Agenda item 2.04, presentation on addressing truancy and attendance through the perspective of Washoe County District Attorney's Office. The presentation discussion.
Thank you. This is Charles Sadlubah for the record. I am in the field of Child Protective Services. I was asked to give a short presentation about how my work is related to what we do in this board. I work closely with the Washoe County Human Services Agency in child abuse and neglect cases under NRS Chapter 432B. Part of neglect pursuant to the statute is educational neglect. NRS 432B, Section 140 in part states that negligent treatment of a child occurs if a child is without proper care, control, or supervision, or lacks the subsistence, education, shelter, medical care, etc. Further, NRS Chapter 432B, Section 330, subsection 2B3 states that a child may be in need of protection if the person responsible for the welfare of the child fails, although the person is financially able to do so, or has been offered financial or other means to do so, to provide the education needs of a child as required by law. Pursuant to our statutes, not only parents, but also uncle, auntie, distant relative, or even complete stranger, as long as they are responsible for the children, could be found neglectful if the children's education is neglected. What then is educational neglect? What are situations that could be considered as educational neglect? The easiest and simplest situation to pick on are children who are excessively truant or not enrolled in school at all and are not homeschooled. In these situations, reports would come in that children are either truant or not enrolled in school at all. The agency would then have to investigate and assess the family situation. If the child is truant, the agency would try to find out what services or resources the school already offered these families. Has the child been involved in truancy before? Has the school or district employed re-engagement specialists already? Has Student Advisory Review Board been utilized? If the child is not enrolled in school, the agency will try and figure out whether information about homeschooling was already provided to the family. If after the investigation and assessment, it was determined that there are other services that could be afforded to the families outside what the specific school or district already provided, the agency would offer those additional services or resources and work with the family. Well, to address the truancy or non-enrollment issues. And if all of these resources are exhausted and the issue continues, then the last resort would be for the Washoe County Human Service Agency to file a petition against the person responsible for the child based on the educational neglect. So, are there any questions regarding that?
So just to clarify, if there is an educational neglect report, the agency that has jurisdiction to investigate whether it's substantiated or not is Human Services Agency?
That is correct. So they investigate, they assess, and if they find that everything is done and the child is still neglected educationally, they'll do what they call internal substantiation of neglect. And if that is not enough, then we elevate it to a legal case. That's when we file the petition for a hearing based on educational neglect. And we take the parents to court. We, for lack of a better term, prosecute them for that.
Danielle Valancourt for the record, what is quote unquote enough? Like enough proof or enough?
It depends. It's a case-by-case basis. If the family has a lot of, or has enough basic needs resources, that enough is not going to be that extensive. It could be just providing transportation or figuring out transportation and how to get the student there and stuff like that. But if the case is more complicated, if the family has a lot more need in terms of providing basic needs, and that enough is going to be more substantial.
And you guys are in constant communication with police, or just depending on what the situation is, obviously?
Depending on the situation, usually with regards to educational neglect, law enforcement officers are not involved. Truancy officers are, well, they are law enforcement officers, but not Reno Police Department or SPD.
Yeah, they're not they're just school district staff.
School district staff, yeah.
Yeah, they're not law enforcement. We have 10 attendance officers in the school district that are all assigned. So they have about 10 schools per attendance officer.
Just a question. If a child, say, has been hurt and police have been called, and that is the reason behind their absenteeism, but the school does not know that that has happened, and the parent is just saying, my kid is sick, because there is no communication between law enforcement and social services with the school, in that sense, like there is a lack of communication between the two. So the teacher could be concerned for the student, and the parent can be lying because they don't have the right to know what happened.
Well, if that is the case, the investigation turns to a more serious investigation. It's not well, it starts with an educational neglect report, right? And after the investigation, it's found out that the child is neglected or abused.
Mm-hmm.
Then that turns into a neglect and abuse investigation instead of educational neglect.
Mm-hmm.
And then the police officers are involved.
It's just knowing who takes the liability and who takes the process forward from there, I
Sure.
guess, was my question. How to clear communication between everybody so that everybody's on the same page.
Oh, it depends on the situation.
Yeah.
It's a more complicated situation if that's the case.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So if a child is given to relatives that the school does not know, right, then how is anybody supposed to really create a solution for said children that are being placed in these situations, I guess?
Those issues are addressed through the investigation assessment. And then we basically make finding who is at fault at that point.
Carrie Pruitt for the record, I'll just add real quickly that usually when there's a kid not attending school much at all, there's a lot more going on. So our intake staff have very in-depth conversations about all those pieces. And like Mr. Obogat said, it is a case by case, and it is very an in-depth interview conversation, and a lot of things are looked into as far as what the school's done, what do we know, and just looking at the family circumstances as a whole, and then moving from there. But until we get the call, we don't know what we don't know, right? And I think that's part of your concern, and it always is. So as soon as the call is made, that's why it's really important for people to report if they just feel funny about something, and it may just be an information only, like that's just putting on record that they've called, and it's a good way to document that a call has been made, and then it can be looked into more if further calls or whatever happen in the future. So we can talk more about it on the side if you like.
Yeah.
Yep, that's what we will do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions? Thank you, Charles. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, we're in section 2.05, and before I read this, since we are kind of out of time, would we like to motion this to table it to keep it on the agenda, or how would?
We can, so just for some background, this particular committee can recommend action items. So our purpose in the Student Intense Advisory Committee is to review data as we did today and to make recommendations for other programming around reducing chronic absenteeism and truancy. So chronic absenteeism is any absence, truancy, or when students are refusing to go to school and they don't have permission from their guardians to miss school and they're physically able to go. So I am keeping this on as sort of like a standing agenda item. If this committee chooses to discuss, move forward with any recommendations, I did clarify with Sarah, because I think that there was some question last time around whether you can direct staff or make recommendations. She said committees can make recommendations. So you can develop recommendations around programming if you feel like it's appropriate, and you vote on that. That's an action item. So we are at 10:10 right now. So we can table this for the next time, or we can discuss. It's up to you all. This is not something you have to take action on. You can discuss it and table it for another day. It will be a standing item for you all to revisit each time that we meet in case you do want to make any recommendations.
Good to know.
Do we have to make a motion then to? No,
No motion unless you want to vote on
Take
the
action.
Okay, for the record, I just want to add that I think that this historical perspective and everything that the district's doing currently is really, really helpful, especially since we don't all see this information, and I'm on a daily basis. And I'm wondering if the information on the PowerPoint, if that can be available for us too.
It is available right now. It's
It
public
is already?
comment.
Okay,
It's up on our
I thought you
on our
guys
website.
said that.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's up on the committee website. So
Great.
yeah.
For reference.
This particular committee is subject to open meeting law, so everything that I present has to be posted.
Right.
So you can find that, but I'm happy to email you directly if it's easier for you to find too. So
Thank you for that reminder. And so are there any more public comment? I think we already did that, but it's in my notes to ask again, so just making sure that we don't have anything.
there's
Do
none.
I have any online? Yeah.
No.
Okay, then item 3.02, announcing of our next meeting, which will be June 6th, 2025. And we will adjourn this meeting at 10:08 for my phone.
Okay, thanks everybody. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
everyone.
It's really good.